Hello, and welcome to the Bad Achievement Thoughts on secondary scaling in BfA. So in this video, I'm going to be quickly talking about the changes to secondary stat scaling and how I think that's going to have an effect on the overall gameplay and gearing in BfA. So again, a quick refresh. In Legion, secondary stats were a bit of a contentious point. They had to be constantly tuned multiple times. Not only did they tune how much of a stat equaled a certain percent during the expansion, but they also had to tune the percent scaling, like how the secondary stats scale over time. Again, their idea here was that, you know, they wanted to combat this problem where early on in expansion, when you don't have a lot of secondary stats, certain specs feel bad. If you don't have X amount of haste, X percent crit, X percent mastery, the spec just felt bad. And they wanted to kind of get you to that point quickly and then hopefully move from there. The problem was their idea for this was basically just kind of upping the base, getting you to a certain point quickly, but they didn't really tame down the scaling after that. We basically kind of functionally had exponentially scaling secondary stats. I mean, it got to the point where I think at the end of the expansion, secondary stats could be double, or in some cases, for my Shadow Priest, almost up to like 2.7 times more than their main stat, right? Where haste was just so valuable for certain specs, or again, crit for others, so on and so forth, that you didn't care about eye level anymore. It was just, I want a piece that has this stat on it. Like Warriors, I know have the same thing as well, I believe with Mastery. So that was a bit of a problem, right? Secondary scaled out of control. It made loot difficult. It made the fact that eye level wasn't the most important thing hard. It made it confusing. I mean, there were plenty of times where people would drop a feast and honestly, very few people should have eaten it, right? Where your 375 stat technically was more valuable to you than 500 of your main stat. That just shouldn't happen. But it was true for a lot of people, especially towards the end of the expansion, because secondaries kind of got out of control with the eye level scaling. So, moving over to BfA, Blizzard has announced that the secondary scaling is going to be what I'm going to call a root function here. So again, if you were to graph, like the square root of x, you know that you basically get a curve that kind of plateaus, right? It kind of like, it goes up, but then kind of plateaus at a certain point. And so because of that, what we're going to find is this. So as you increase in eye level, so for example, as you were to go from, let's say, eye level 200 to 205, you're going to gain secondaries, right? The amount of secondaries, you add together all your secondaries together, that amount is going to increase. But as we get higher and higher eye level, the amount of increase in between 5 eye level differences is going to decrease over time. Slightly, very slightly. Okay, so basically you're going to have this thing where, yes, every eye level increase, you will get more secondary stats. But the amount by which you're getting more is not going to be constantly increasing. It's not going to be like a runaway situation where secondaries have become more and more and more valuable. I mean, a good example of this is the value of the socket, right? So again, the socket, because all you can put in there are secondary stats, I guess not technically, but you get the point. That value of socket would go from 5 eye levels to 10 eye levels to some classes 15 eye levels just for a socket because of how valuable that 200 stats would be. So this change I think is going to have a big effect on a number of things. One, and this has definitely been seen through leveling and such, is that eye level is king for most pieces. So for most pieces, for most specs, I do believe that eye level will be king. And eye level will, I think, actually gain in strength and value as the expansion goes on. Now, that's not to say that secondaries won't be valuable. They absolutely still will be. But it's going to be more about balancing your stats than it is going to be about trying to maximize a specific one. Because as we get higher and higher, it's going to be basically more a matter of just rearranging stats, right? You're basically going to be taking from one stat to give to another. Whereas currently, it was possible to get an eye level upgrade that would cause you to increase your haste by a good percent and not decrease any other percent, right? You might, actually have, the same or even more mastery, more haste, and just kind of keep increasing, to where you could actually have high levels of your other stats that you normally would not be able to have that late in expansion. Normally, you had to kind of pick and choose one stat over another, and I think in BfA, it's going to be much harder to do that. You're going to have to basically say, okay, I want to get 30% crit, but that might mean I can only then get 20% haste. I can't have 30% of both. I just, I can't get that to work. So I think the change is going to be, in general, a positive effect, because I do think not only does Blizzard want eye level to be king when it comes to gearing decisions, but I also think that it's going to help, especially if they do go through that personal loot change. Personal loot only works when eye level is king. When eye level is not king, personal loot is bad in a lot of cases, because you can get an eye level upgrade and it not has to be an upgrade, and now it's locked to you and you can't trade it, and that sucks. So having eye level be king will help personal loot, right? It will definitely make it so that more often than not, if you get an eye level upgrade, it actually is an upgrade for you. Now, that doesn't fix all the problems with personal. I have another video that I will put a link down to in the description, talking about my thoughts on the personal loot change, or the possible personal loot change. But eye level being king will definitely help. Secondly, it seems currently, and this could not be true, but on the piece of Azerite armor that they give you, there is no secondary stats. So again, here you can see the piece of Azerite here they give us. You can choose between a helm, a shoulder, and a chest. And you see here there are no secondaries on it. Instead, you simply have the option to pick your Azerite power. Now, again, I have not seen all the pieces. I don't know if there are future pieces that have secondaries on them or not. But, so again, if there are, ignore this. But the fact that there are going to be at least some Azerite pieces, at least maybe while leveling or something, that don't have them on there, again, is going to, hinder the ability to super scale your secondaries. Again, if you think about it, chest and helm were two of the pieces that had the highest secondary budget, right? They have the highest stat budget of any pieces. Your legs, your chest, and your helm all had the greatest. Now, shoulders were a tier down from those, of course, but again, you're going to be losing a good bit of secondaries if it is true that those Azerite pieces do not have secondaries on them. Now, again, that might change, and if that's the case, ignore what I just said. But I think it's an interesting thing as well. Again, it just shows how Blizzard is trying to kind of control the secondary stat issue. In general, I think that I like this change. I think that it's going to make for more controlled decisions about loot. I think it's going to make for you to really have to make decisions over what stats you're trying to balance. I think it should make specs more engaging, because they can't just go for 50% haste, and so again, stats that had value but you kind of ignored might actually be better now. I've heard rumors of versatility scaling actually in this system being better, so verse won't be as crap as it is for so many specs. Again, I know it's good for some, but because of the fact you can't just super max out, right? You can't reach those high amounts of crit, haste, mastery as you might have in the past while maintaining others at a decent level. You might have to pick and choose, and it might just be that stats that previously you never would have thought of going for have more value, because you aren't able to reach those plateaus with the other stats. So yeah, I think that in general this is a pretty decent change. I think that keeping secondaries stats in check, again, you will get more of them as the expansion goes on, but you're going to have to basically be balancing them far more around certain kind of plateau levels, and really focusing on your main stat leading to the biggest increase in your overall DPS, healing, tanking ability. I think is a very important thing. I think that it's going to fix a lot of the problems we saw with gearing. It's going to make some pieces, though, kind of interesting. Again, I'm still very interested right now in the rings. Again, rings currently have no primary, just secondary, so it's going to be interesting to see how that affects those. Maybe the rings actually get a higher increased secondary budget. Rings and necks were already used in the past to kind of balance your stats out, right? To kind of balance where you were putting your secondaries. It'd be nice if maybe they actually got an increase in their allotment of stats, secondary stats, even more than they have currently, to really make it so, okay, if you want to balance a certain stat, these are the pieces you want to go for, right? So again, making them more valuable. But again, that would, of course, possibly hurt the personal loot, and I talk about that in another video, because again, Blizzard wants eye level to equal upgrade. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. So those are my thoughts. Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. Again, if you liked what I was saying, give me a like. If you don't like, disagree with what I'm saying with, go ahead and give me a downvote. That's absolutely fine. But again, I just want to start a discussion on this topic. I'm very interested in knowing what you all think. So again, thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next one.